If you see the title of the video, then you know what this video is going to be about. The Boston Bruins are not playing good hockey right now. They look like they're playing in quicksand, and every game they look a bit worse than the previous game. Their head coach, Jim Montgomery, is trying everything under the sun with regardless to line combinations. I've seen jokes in my comments saying, he's done everything but play Swayman on forward. You're not wrong, because we've seen everything from him, and nothing seems to get this team moving in the right direction. At the time of this video, the Boston Bruins' current record is 4-6-1, and even in 2015-16, the last time the Bruins didn't make the playoffs, they started the year 6-3-2. You must go all the way back to 2006-07 season to get a start like this one when they went 4-5-2. So, history is not on the Bruins side this year. 76% of teams that aren't in a playoff spot by American Thanksgiving usually don't make the playoffs. So that is the spot where a lot of NHL GMs fire their coaches if the team is underperforming. And I think it's safe to say the Boston Bruins are underperforming. American Thanksgiving, according to Google, because I'm Canadian, is November 28th, which means the Boston Bruins will have played 24 games in the 2024-25 season. The Boston Bruins currently sit last in the division and 28th overall in the league. I truly doubt if this keeps up, the Bruins management will wait until November 28th to even make a change. That is why I'm asking the question, what if the Boston Bruins fire Jim Montgomery? So buckle up, Bruins fans. I'm here to give you the latest info on your beloved Boston Bruins. If you've been liking my Bruins content, please leave me a like and subscribe. If you've already done so, thank you, and let's get into it. The NHL has a high rate of head coach turnover, with the average tenure for an NHL coach being 2.35 years. The NHL's turnover rate is much higher than any other of the three major leagues. This is why I'm asking the question, because whether it's right or wrong, the NHL fires their coaches a lot, and they always take the fall. I'd admit, the most time, the coach isn't the reason, and I truly can't pinpoint one glaring reason why Montgomery should be fired besides the record of the current team. I would like to add that the GM and the president's job is to assemble the roster, and the coach can only play the players he's given. The coach has input, but doesn't decide who gets sent down or called up, or who the team drafts or trades for. Jim Montgomery is on the final year of his current contract, and even though Don Sweeney has said they have conversations about an extension, their current start, I doubt they're doing that anymore. Montgomery right now is what you call a lame duck coach because he can be fired at any time because the team doesn't owe him any money after this season. The coach's salary doesn't go towards the salary cap, so teams like Boston that generate some of the league's highest revenues, more often than not, don't care if they fire the coach. Jim Montgomery was hired after the Boston Bruins fired one of the most successful coaches in Boston Bruins history in Bruce Cassidy. The Boston Bruins fired Cassidy because he hurt a couple players' feelings, it seems, based on reports from the media. In Montgomery's first season behind the Bruins bench, he set an NHL record for wins, but they got knocked out in embarrassing fashion in the first round of the playoffs to the Florida Panthers. The Panthers that season went to the Stanley Cup Final only to lose to the Las Vegas Golden Knights, who happened to be coached by former Bruins head coach Bruce Cassidy. As always in Boston, when a coach is fired, the media likes to spread the team's message like wildfire as to why they let said coach go. When Bruce came into Boston, he was labeled as a player's coach, and yet when he was let go, he was said to be too hard on the players, and particularly Jake DeBrusk. Any other rumor about Bruce not getting along with stars like Bergeron, Pastrnak, or Marchand is just not true. And if they continue to be spread, it is what it is right now. Jack Eichel said after they won the Stanley Cup, Bruce was the reason the Knights won the cup. Eichel said, "It was incredible. I think what he did for our group and for me as a player, it was the reason we won. I think he came in and the way that he changed our game, but just pushed the guys and hold everyone accountable the way that he was able to get us to play. It was great. He was phenomenal. He was great all year." Now we're seeing some of the media in Boston starting to turn on Montgomery, which makes me think so was upper management, like they did with Bruce. Montgomery is 100% a player's coach. And now people are saying they need someone tougher on the players to right the ship, which also seems to be the message around the NHL. Guess what? The Bruins had that coach and fired him. Don't get me wrong, coaches' messages can become stale, and they all have a shelf life. But it wasn't Don who fired Bruce. It was Cam who made Don do it. Don respected Bruce so much he went to his house to do it in person. Now, if the Bruins do fire Montgomery, who do they hire? What type of coach do they bring in? My guess is they would bring in an experienced coach and one that isn't a player's coach at all. Joe Sacco is currently the Bruins' associate coach. So, in one aspect, if they fire Montgomery, he would instantly become head coach by proxy. Would that fix anything, though, as he's already there? When they fired Claude Julien, though, Cassidy was on the coaching staff of the Bruins and then became the head coach after letting Julien go. NHL.com says Joe Sacco is in his 10th season in the Bruins organization as the assistant coach. He's the associate coach, though, as he was named to the staff on July 24, 2014. He came to the Bruins with an 11-year coaching experience, which followed a 13-year NHL playing career. After serving as an assistant coach in the AHL level in both Lowell 2004-05 and Albany 2006-07, he was named head coach of the AHL Lake Erie Monsters in 2007 and served in that capacity till 2009. He moved to the NHL ranks on June 4, 2009, when he was named the head coach of the Colorado Avalanche. The 2010 Jack Adams finalist served in that position for 4 seasons with a record of 130, 134, 40 behind the Avalanche bench. Honestly, look up all the Jack Adams Awards winners or finalists and look how quickly in the 2 years after they get fired. It's actually hilarious. He then spent 1 season as the assistant coach for the Buffalo Sabres in 2013 before leaving to join the Bruins. The native of Melrose, Mass. Was the 4th-round draft pick of the Toronto Maple Leafs out of Boston University and is a veteran of 738 NHL games with Toronto, Anaheim, New York Islanders, Washington, and Philadelphia. He had 94 goals with 119 assists for 213 points over his 13 NHL seasons. Sacco's last head coaching job was in Colorado in 2013-14, which he was fired after the team missed the playoffs for the 3rd straight season. A lot can be said about coaches learning from his mistakes, and Sacco's last job was during the lockout, and Colorado didn't say anything bad about him in the press after the fact. Sacco coaches a more up-tempo style of play, activating defense, but letting forwards take chances to create scoring opportunities. Some of the knocks on him, though, is when he was let go in Colorado, he was known as a stubborn coach who doesn't make adjustments and makes some weird lineup decisions, including, but not limited to, Matt Duchene on the wing, Paul Stastny as a defensive zone starter, Craig Zanon and Matt Hunwick as semi-regulars, time on the ice leaders, 5-man power play with Winnick on the top line. This isn't to say a guy can't change, but it does sound very similar to how current head coach Jim Montgomery handles the Bruins roster. So who else could the Bruins hire, and what direction do I think the team will go in if they pull the trigger? I think the Boston Bruins would name Sacco interim coach, but would start, or honestly, have already started talking to the likes of Gerard Gallant, Joel Quenneville, Jay Woodcroft, and Todd McLennan. I'm not going to go down the road of coaches that haven't coached in the NHL because I don't think the Bruins would go down that road at all. Let's start with Todd McLennan, who was a candidate in a lot of coaching positions this offseason, but in the end, didn't land a head coaching job. A lot of teams looking for a coach were young teams, and I think McLennan, who is a hard-nosed defensive structure coach, wasn't exactly the right spot for a very young team. The 56-year-old McLennan had spent more of 4 seasons as the head coach for the Los Angeles Kings. He compiled a 164, 130, 44 record in 338 games with the Kings, finishing 3rd in the Pacific Division in each of the last 2 seasons until his fire. The Kings finished 3rd in the division that season as well, were 25, 13, and 10 at the time of McLennan's dismissal. Prior to his time in the Kings, McLennan had coached the San Jose Sharks Prior to his time with the Kings, McLennan had coached the San Jose Sharks from 2008 until 2015, and the Edmonton Oilers from 2015 till 2018. The Sharks made the playoffs in 6 of McLennan's 7 seasons behind the bench, while the Oilers missed the postseason in 2 of 3 seasons as a head coach. Just before joining San Jose, McLennan was an assistant coach for the 2007-8 Stanley Cup champions Detroit Red Wings. McLennan coaches a structure very similar to Julian when he was in Boston, but with Cassidy's communication approach, letting players know where he stands and what they need to work on. Let's take a look at Jay Woodcroft, who was fired because of a very similar start what Jim Montgomery is having currently. Woodcroft and assistant coach Dave Manson were let go amid a terrible start to the 2023-24 season that saw the Oilers come out of the gate with a 3-9-1 record. It was a shocking fall from grace for a young coach who had guided the team to a 76-31-11 record over the previous 2 seasons. Honestly, it sounds so familiar to exactly what Montgomery is going through right now, except the Oilers had the best player in the world on their team in Connor McDavid and turned their season around. Woodcroft was the video coach on the same 2008 Cup-winning Red Wings and was the head coach of the AHL Championship Bakersfield Condors in 2021. He was also a victim of horrible goaltending earlier last season in Edmonton. Despite the roster and is good enough to go deep in the playoffs, it went to the Stanley Cup Finals, Woodcroft had a 79, 41, and 13 coaching record with the Oilers. And he also had Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on his team. My biggest cause for concern with Woodcroft is you don't hear his name linked to many head coaching jobs when they become available. Now, let's look at Gerard Gallant and what he would bring to the Boston Bruins. His name has been mentioned in my comments a ton recently, so let's take a look. Gallant has become famous for pushing good teams to great heights for 2 or 3 year stints and then promptly getting fired. Or, getting a cab called for him in Florida. Florida made the playoffs in Gallant's second season as head coach, then fired in his third. The Golden Knights beat the Winnipeg Jets with Gallant behind the bench on their way to the 2018 Stanley Cup Final, but then lost in the first round of Gallant's second season and replaced him with Peter DeBoer in his third. The New York Rangers eventually pick him up, surpassing 100 points in back-to-back seasons, but replacing with Peter Laviolette after losing in the first round. This is my biggest knock on Gallant, as he has a very short shelf life with teams, making me think his message becomes stale in the room with the players very fast. So many teams hire him only to fire him a couple years later. Maybe he would be a good guy to bring in, right the ship in Boston, knowing they would need someone else down the line to take over. Gallant isn't known as a coach that makes adjustments and was continually outcoached during the playoffs. It's how Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals won in 2018 Stanley Cup, and how the San Jose Sharks came back from a 3-1 deficit a season later. When the Washington Capitals woke up Ovechkin, the former head coach had no answers. So I need to ask you, do you think Gallant is a good fit in Boston, and what they need if they actually do fire Montgomery? Which brings me to Joel Quenneville, who is now allowed to coach in the NHL again, and as Brian Burke said, should now jump to the top of any team's list if they're looking for a coach. I'm not going to go down the road of what caused Quenneville to be relieved of his coaching duties because I'm pretty sure you all know. And if you don't, just Google it. Quenneville won 3 Stanley Cups during his time with the Blackhawks and ranks second all-time in the coaching list with 969 wins. He led the Panthers to the playoffs in 2020-21 and then started the following season with a 7-0-0 record before he was forced out of the league. Joel Quenneville is the second winningest coach in NHL history, and his record speaks for itself. Quenneville has a career record of 969 wins, 572 losses, and 150 ties. Quenneville's record is 969, 552, 150 with 77 ties. It's the second most wins behind Scotty Bowman, who has 1,244. He coached the St. Louis Blues, Colorado Avalanche, Blackhawks, and the Panthers, winning the Stanley Cup 3 times in Chicago, 2010, 2013, 2015. He was hired as the coach of the Panthers before the 2019-2020 season and resigned 7 games into the 2021-22 season. Quenneville has admitted to his mistakes he has made, and he's been out of the league for enough time, I feel. With the Oilers not having the best start to their season, I can't help but think they're looking at Quenneville as a possible replacement since Stan Bowman is the GM there. Quenneville is without a doubt the best candidate available right now. But would he want to coach the Boston Bruins? And would the Boston Bruins want what comes with hiring him if they fire Montgomery? These are the questions that would be hard to answer because I have no doubt that Quenneville could turn this team around. But Boston is a powder keg, and I'm not sure he'd even want to coach in Boston as his first gig after everything that has happened to him. He would, though, still be close enough to his family in Chicago if he took the job, so that wouldn't be an issue, and his record speaks for itself. I have no doubt that Quenneville will be coaching again in the NHL, and I feel it will be this year. But where is the answer? I don't have. I'm always about forgiveness, so I see no issue with him being the coach of the team. But if I'm Sweeney, and I'm using my last bullet to fire Montgomery, then I would be darn sure that the leadership group would be okay with him being their coach after everything that has happened. The Bruins right now are lost, and the last thing you need to do is divide the room because it wouldn't make it any easier. These next few games are going to be huge for Montgomery because, like it or not, he's on the hot seat, and if they don't turn this around, he will be fired. Let me know in the comments what you think and who you think is the best candidate if the Boston Bruins do fire Jim Montgomery. That's a wrap on today's video. To stay up to date on all the news surrounding the Boston Bruins, please subscribe and drop me a like. If news breaks surrounding the Boston Bruins, be sure to check out the channel. If you've already subscribed to the channel, thank you, and I'll see you next time.